Week 10 is in the books. We had a lot of stuff going on, a lot of weird games I noticed in week 10, not a lot of great ones, if I'm being 100% honest, but there is a lot to break down from injuries, takeaways, dynasty trades recently made by you, the audience, and early top 5 waivers. You guys know what we do on the Monday stream here. Let's start it off, Danny, with some injuries. We actually, knock on wood, because we still got one more game tonight, did not have that bad of a week of injuries. There wasn't anything super, super major that went down. No elite fantasy wide receiver one tore their ACL or anything like we've seen the last couple of weeks. But major injury alerts that we did see, the biggest being Trevor Lawrence, did not practice, at all this week, likely to end his season. The injury that he missed the game on Sunday against Minnesota. They talked about the shoulder injury that he was dealing with. It's not his throwing shoulder, but it is possible he's out for the year.
Well, it's for context for that, and obviously, even if it's not the throwing shoulder as a quarterback, your left shoulder here, you get hit hard, you're feeling that thing. And on top of that, again, we have listed here, it's a type 3 AC joint sprain. If you guys have ever dealt with AC joint sprains, grade ones, again, you could usually deal with between 1 to 2 weeks. And usually when you come back, there's a little bit of soreness. There's a little bit to fight through. Think about Dak Prescott in 2017 against the Eagles. That was basically the comparable there. In terms of a grade 3, like it can damage like your overall structure of your shoulder, overall structure of your collarbone moving forward. So if he does not take this carefully, which again, judging by the sounds of it, 2-9 Jaguars team, there's no need for them to or 2-8, whatever they are. There's realistically no need to rush him back. Let him heal. Let him get that right, because if he rushes that back, it could have structural damage for the rest of his life.
Yeah, no, not only that, the best comparable for this injury was this is the injury that Anthony Richardson had last year. Of course, it was to his throwing shoulder. It was not to his non-throwing shoulder, but still, he required surgery for it. It's very possible that Trevor Lawrence undergoes surgery for it as well, and it will likely end his season and probably the Doug Peterson era in Jacksonville, because I would imagine they're going to be looking for a new head coach after this season. The other major injury that we saw was Miles Sanders. It looks like suffered a fractured fibula, which is the same injury that Isaiah Pacheco has been dealing with all season. Probably done for the year. Again, not a very good Carolina team. Chuba Hubbard obviously playing really well. Jonathan Brooks expected back after the bye. So Miles Sanders being out of this backfield will likely open up a little bit of work for Chuba Hubbard and Jonathan Brooks.
I will say again, like, obviously hope he's okay. But if you do have Brooks, this is like your glimmer of hope, in the sense that we know now. There was always like the concern it could be a 3-man committee, because we know how coaching staffs are. I mean, we've already seen how they've handled the Brooks injury thus far. But with Sanders unavailable now, like, this ground game has been really good. And I still think Chuba will be the one when he comes back, because there's no reason to put Brooks over Chuba. But if you're telling me it's a 1A, 1B situation, Chuba's getting 16 to 20 touches a week, Brooks is getting 10 to 13. 10 to 13, he gets some receiving usage. I think that could still play as like a low-end RB3.
Yeah, no, I definitely could. I think it, like you said, I don't think we were really worried about Miles Sanders, Jonathan Brooks, and Chuba Hubbard managers, but it's just yet another thing that you don't need to worry about, which is nice. Yeah. Again, those were the major injuries. There was a ton of minor injuries, guys who were leaving and coming back. The one guy that did leave and didn't return, there's two guys actually. Tank Bigsby re-injured his ankle issue that he's been dealing with for a couple of weeks. That's probably an upgrade to Travis Etienne. But again, we just mentioned there's no Trevor Lawrence probably for the rest of the year. And then Dalton Kincaid suffered a PCL injury, landed really hard on his knee. It kind of flexed when he did it, and he did not return as well. So Dawson Knox maybe in order for some people. And also, I mean, they were already without Keon Coleman and Amari Cooper in that game. So they're starting to lose weapons pretty quickly in Buffalo. Those were the two guys, at least as far as I could tell, that suffered injuries and did not return. There was like 5 more names I can list off in a second who did suffer injuries and came back.
I mean, two specifically looked serious at the time that they got hurt. I mean, we were literally on live when Chuba Hubbard got twisted up over his knee, and we thought, oh, like, that does not look good. Like you have listed here, dislocated kneecap. He did return to the game, and he looked phenomenal. So it doesn't seem like something on top of that. I mean, the Panthers do have their bye, so even if he is sore, they can rest him at least for the week. So no concerns there for Chuba. And then like you see here with Najee, he was down on the field for quite a while. Like I thought when it first happened, because obviously I was playing against Mason, he had Najee. I was watching a little bit of the game. Like people were around him. It really looked concerning at first. And then like you have here, he did return to the game. So something to monitor. Again, all these guys, except for a couple, ended up returning the game. So not like something that's going to impact them moving forward, but still something to monitor, like I said.
Yeah, Malik Neighbors quickly evaluated for concussion, cleared and returned. Aaron Jones, this is the one that you probably need to monitor the most. Rib injury, left, was actually like seen carted to the locker room, but then it looks like he probably got some kind of injection of some sort, and he came back and did play on the final 2 drives. Again, Cam Akers may be a guy that we need to pay attention to on the open waiver wire this week, but it appears that Aaron Jones should be okay. Something to monitor practice-wise this coming week. Xavier Worthy hurt his shoulder. Again, monitor that. He landed hard on that play where Mahomes overthrew him out of the boundary, and he wasn't able to come down with that.
Is Worthy a drop? Straight up.
I mean, he's definitely not a must-add right now, especially 10-man leagues. Like, you could definitely drop him. Sam Laporta, AC sprain, did not return, ? Dr. Morris wasn't sure if he returned or not. He didn't know if he came back in the game or not.
I believe he came back. I remember
anyways, monitor Sam Laporta's shoulder injury. Looked like an AC sprain, probably just a grade 1. He could play through it. We'll have to wait and see there. And then Najee Harris also missed a drive or 2, I think, with a knee injury. It looked kind of bad at the time as well. He did end up returning. And then also Tony Pollard was limping around a little bit, and that caused Tajay Spears to play a little bit more than we were used to seeing as well.
Context on that, Tony Pollard's been battling a foot injury in practice for like the last 3 weeks.
Well, he wasn't listed on the injury report this week. He was dealing with it early, like obviously last week he didn't practice at all and
the week before
and having a monster game, but he appeared to be okay this week because he wasn't really on the practice report much.
Yeah. It's just weird, the reporting of it. He limited, no practice for 2 weeks, plays the last couple games, now gets hurt again. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. So Dylan mentioned something in the chat that I need to address right off the top. It is not one of my takeaways, but I would like to just point out, if you guys were on the Sunday morning live stream, we built out a not a pick-em-entry, but yeah, we did actually build out a pick-em-entry, but I built out specifically a parlay that I was doing, and I had Adonai Mitchell, 50 plus yards, which he hit. Demario Douglas, 50 plus yards, which I believe he had 50.
Group chat was going bananas at the time for this, by the way.
Slicky Rick Pearsall, 50 plus yards, which hit. The only thing I missed of $2,900 that I would have won on a $20 bet was Noah Brown to have 50 plus yards. And Noah Brown was hit in the chest with a 25-yard pass at the end of the game that would have put him over 50 plus yards.
He was 17 short, right?
Yeah, 17 yards short. And he had a play at the very second last play before the Ertz, short of the sticks play. It hit Noah Brown in the chest, and I would have won close to $3,000 on that. That one sucked. Maybe
this isn't hilarious for you, but I'll tell you from my perspective, the most hilarious part of this was that the Steelers got the ball back. The first 3 downs, Washington stopped them. Washington now has time to get the ball back, maybe throw a couple darts. Maybe Noah Brown gets a miracle to cover. It's 4th and 1. Classic Tomlin fashion. He's like, we're going to try to get them off sides, and if they don't jump, we'll just punt it to them. And this motherfucker jumps offside.
The first time that's ever worked, by the way. How many times have we seen offenses go out there and just ready, set, and it never works. It never works.
How do you jump?
And Johnny Newton, the defensive tackle for the Commanders, jumps. He's a rookie. Again, rookie mistake, but I probably wouldn't have hit anyways, but it's just annoying that was how it ended. Cause I'm like, Noah Brown, I yelled no in my house, loud. Cause I saw it. I'm like, okay, Noah Brown, 85s, 1-on-1 down at the bottom of the screen. I see Jaden uncork one. I'm like, oh God, catch this ball. Hits him right in the nameplate and in the number, and he doesn't catch it. And it was a catchable pass.
Hey, just go back to Dallas versus Jacksonville. What was it, last year or 2 years ago? Actually, it was 2 years ago. You remember that when he dropped one right off the chest, gets picked off, return for a touchdown in OT? He's used to doing that. He loves hitting it chest.
I've had 2 really big bet wins nearly miss. The other one was the Brian Thomas one on the doubleheader on Monday night that I was a Brian Thomas touchdown short of 12 grand on a 12 leg parlay for $5 or whatever. And Brian Thomas at the end of the game, it was garbage time because the Bills beat the living daylights out of the Jaguars in that game. And at the end of the game, they had a garbage time touchdown, and Brian Thomas was taken off the field right before he threw it.
On top of that, did you track our picks this week? How fucking unlucky we were getting?
Yeah, we were getting pretty unlucky. The pick'em that we built out was we took Demario Douglas.
His line was at 3.5, and I remember specifically we were like, fuck it, bump it to 4.5. He finished with 4.
So unnecessary. But yeah. Anyways, we can get into some of the takeaways. We already started a little bit in the pre-show. Actually, we didn't actually talk about this yet, but Oh man, the Bucs are so close. The Bucs are so close to having such a great run out with
the Cowboys aren't.
yeah, no, the Cowboys are not. But let me just get through my diatribe on Tampa Bay here. In a 4-game stretch where we had the hardest part of our schedule, we have the Falcons, we have the Ravens, we have the Chiefs, we have the 49ers. Unfortunately, midway through the Ravens game in the first quarter or whatever, Mike Evans goes out with an injury. At the end of the Ravens game, Chris Godwin goes out with injury. He's out for the season. The next 2 games that we have are against the 2 Super Bowl teams from last year, and we took both of them to the brink. We have Kansas City on the ropes in overtime, could have gone for 2, whatever you guys want to say. We lose that game. San Francisco, kicker problems, we could have closed that game at the end as well. It's 1st and goal from like the 10-yard line or whatever we had it. Couldn't get it into the end zone. We have to settle for a game-tying field goal. And of course, in Todd Bowles' defense fashion, he's playing soft zone coverage, and they go down the field, and of course, they get a field goal and win the game.
After the kicker missed 3 in that game, by the way.
Exactly. If we had just had one of Godwin or Evans for either of these games, we would probably be in a lot better position. Thankfully, I still believe that we can make the playoffs because we have the easiest schedule I've ever seen in my life down the stretch. And Atlanta lost, which also helps to New Orleans. Because
if you make the playoffs, it will have to be in the NFC South.
It probably will be. You're right. We probably will have to win the South. We're probably done. But Giants, Carolina, and Vegas coming out of the bye, and then Carolina again later on in the season, we have to be able to win at least 9 or 10 games. Like, to be honest, like I know we only have 4 wins right now, but like the games are so winnable. We should have Evans back after the bye. Tristan Wirfs' injury that he went out with doesn't appear to be serious. It's possible he could return after the bye. At the very least, he might be out a game or 2 afterwards. But I don't know, dude. We're playing so well. That's the annoying thing. Our offense, for what shitty cards we got dealt this past week, no Tristan Wirfs, no Godwin, no Evans. It's all just scheme and raw Bakerisms. Like we played really well in that game, and I think we deserve to win one of those, at least Kansas City or San Fran.
I mean, respectable. Again, you guys are playing with a lot of fire, and I can't relate right now, to be honest, because I mean, this was my takeaway too, but we'll just go right to it, because if you're going to talk about your team, I'll talk about my team. We'll get this out of the way now. We're talking about our boys, but about my boys, that was, I mean, straight up, I fell asleep in the third quarter, and I woke up, and they had 2 more touchdowns. I'm like, oh, okay, fair enough. I fell asleep at 14-6. Actually, I fell asleep at 21-6. I saw the Johnny Wilson touchdown. Passed out on my couch, woke up. It was 28-6 in the fourth quarter. I'm like, wait, like, did I miss anything? And I checked my phone, and I'm like, oh, like nothing has actually happened on our offense. Never mind. I missed absolutely nothing. The Cowboys passed for 66 yards on 29 pass attempts. 66 yards on 29 pass attempts. Yikes. Cooper Rush had 45 yards on 23. Trey Lance had 21 yards on 6 with a pick. So, like, was Dak having a great year? Absolutely fucking not. But at least he was making this a watchable fucking team. That offense against Philadelphia, it didn't look like an NFL caliber offense. It looked worse than like Vegas.
It looked like you had Tim Boyle playing quarterback. It looked like the Dolphins when Tua was out of the lineup.
It legitimately was the worst game I've ever watched. On top of that, it's like people are going to see 34 points that the Eagles scored and think, oh my God, like the Eagles offense is on fire. Like the Cowboys defense. Dude, the Cowboys defense in the first half specifically played fucking unreal. They had 5 sacks in the first half. They were getting after Hurts, tackling well. Parsons was awesome in this game coming off the ankle injury. Trayvon Diggs was playing well. I mean, overall, if you actually look at the box score, it's not like they lit up the box score in terms of overall yards. But when you have an offense at the other end that's turning the ball over inside their own 20-yard line, that isn't getting first downs on offense, that's giving great field position to the other team, it's like that's how those type of games get away like very early. And honestly, I'm looking at the Cowboys schedule. Maybe they beat the Giants on Thanksgiving, but with how bad that offense looked, I wouldn't think that they win. I would be shocked if they won more than 2 games for the rest of the year.
How many games have you won so far?
We're 3-6. I think we're going to be a 3 to 5 win football team.
Yeah. I think
it's that bad. The offense is useless. It's the worst offense in the league.
Yeah, that makes total sense to me. I mean, our teams are going in the same direction at the moment. I still think the Bucs still have some hope just because of the division and, the schedule down the stretch. But yeah, it's not looking good for either of us. You guys are playing for draft position, and thankfully,
we got a good pick, man. That's what I'm hoping for now. I need fucking Mason Graham from Michigan on my team. Again, obviously I'm a Michigan fan, but dude, we haven't had an interior rusher like a Mason Graham, and I don't know how long, since Jay Ratliff.
Yeah, it's been a while for you guys.
The small stretch that we had of fucking, oh my god, fucking his name, what's it, 6'7" defensive tackle, fucking
Ed Too Tall Jones.
No. He had like a weed issue, so he got cut from the team. Oh my god, I'm drawing a blank.
Randy Gregory?
Irving. Dude, David Irving. He was disgusting for a 2-year stretch. Basically got kicked off the team because he wouldn't stop smoking weed in the time where the NFL actually cared about that.
Right.
We haven't had a dominant because he had like 9 sacks the year before he basically stopped playing football. We haven't had an interior rusher like that since him. Mason Graham would change this defense if we got the right DC. If we got like Salah or something next year as a DC, I'd be pretty excited.
Yeah, no, the coaching cycle is going to be really interesting. It's weird because I'm one of the few Bucs fans that isn't calling for Todd Bowles to be fired and Liam Cohen and the whole. The reason this is the last thing I'll say about our teams, and we can move on. I have been a Bucs fan for a long time, and I've watched good player talent after talent be wasted by bad coaches, not knowing how to develop players. And the one thing I have seen on the defensive side of the ball, specifically from Todd Bowles, is when you draft a Zion McCollum in the 5th round because he's a toolsy corner and he becomes one of the best DBs in the league this year. It's one of the most underrated things about our defense is our second corner and third corner are terrible, and that's why you can throw against us. But McCollum has been nails this year, dude. And
what happened to
that
Dean?
Didn't happen before Todd Bowles' defensive coordinator stat. And it's not just Bowles too. It's Casey Rogers and all the other the defensive staff that he's built up. They're excellent developmental coaches, and people are forgetting that when Todd Bowles doesn't use a timeout properly or doesn't go for 2 when he should, you lose that. I would rather have bad game management and teams and players that develop and become everything that they could be than a guy who misuses timeouts or whatever. Like Andy Reid does that, but he's a good coach. You know what I mean?
100%. On top of that, you got to think for example, the main example would be, are you firing Dan Campbell to promote Ben Johnson? And it's well, if you fire Dan Campbell, how are the guys in the locker room going to react to that?
And people love Bowles too. There's the locker room's turned on him. That's never happened in Tampa Bay, never. And people are just fire Bowles and promote Liam Cohen from within. It's dude, I don't know if that's going to work, man. I don't know if that's going to work.
Quickly, I got to address this because I do see it in the chat. Mason, you can clip this if you want. I'll take full accountability. I mean, straight up, I'm not going to blame it on Jamar Chase having 55. I'm not going to blame it on anything other than the fact that your team outperformed mine this week. And the crowd is going to get awarded with a clip of me singing the national anthem for the United States. It was the fight for freedom. Unfortunately, in this instance, Canada did come out on the bottom. And as a result, you guys are going to get a treat for that. I'm going to, when I say I'm going to be singing the anthem, I'm not going to be half-assed, I will put on a show for you guys. That's what you guys
dial it up.
If I'm going to make a bet and I'm going to be the one reaching out to Mason to make the bet, I'm 100% committing to the bet.
Yeah, got to commit to the bit. Anyways, Nathan is probably going to beat me tonight unless here's the crazy thing.
You play him, the weakest team goes off, by the way.
Yeah, his team's terrible, but he beat me this week. His team had a great week. Here's the crazy thing. He is up by 12 points on me right now, and you'd be like, oh man, 12 points with Puka and Kyron left to play, and I only have Achane left to play. That's an insurmountable deficit. Last week, Achane would have outscored Puka and Kyron combined by 20.
I mean, with all due respect, it helps when Puka decides to go Rocky Balboa. Guy.
I know that, but I'm just saying there's a chance. There's a chance I can still win.
Hopefully, we both get our fucking golden flower, if you will, because I am a couple different spelling of that, and it's a completely different context, by the way. But golden flower versus something else. But
golden shower.
Yeah, I am down by 41.6 in my second home league. So
Danny has 8 home leagues, just for the record.
In Box Munchers, that's the way I always talk about it. I need 41.6 from Box Munchers, and I have Achane and Jonnu. So while I'm probably going to lose, if Tyreek gets ruled out and Jonnu just gets like force-fed 9 targets and this is the Achane week, I got an outside shot.
Yeah.
Again, small, but we'll see.
I got annihilated by Jamar Chase in my home league this week. And the rest of my team actually didn't do that bad. I would have beaten 7-8 other teams in my league, which is the story of my season in my home league this year. It's a wrap. It's curtains. I'd have to win out and have like a shit ton of points in the process to even have a hope of making the playoffs in my home league.
So, by the way, trading away Pickens this week might bite me because, again, I assume that, okay, he has Chase. I'm probably going to lose the week. I'll eat 1 week next week of Evans. I already pretty much wrote off the week as a loss. Now I have an 18% win equity, and the guy that I had to throw in my lineup because Evans was out and Njoku's on bye, Kraft's on bye, and Worthy is worthless. Benson, I just couldn't put into my lineup with Connor healthy. I had to throw Tolbert in, and if I had just kept Pickens, I would have had like 15 extra points. So it probably would have been more of like a 60-40 situation for me coming back rather than the 80-20 I'm at. But I still have an outside shot. I would need Stafford, Kupp, and Nakua, which are absolutely the guys that I want to rely upon to score basically 65 points. Again,
I would
outside
need
shot, but
in my home league, I would need 29 from Jalen Waddle, which in my league format is actually very possible. It's full PPR. There's big play bonuses and all that kind of stuff. Had I all week, I had Ricky Pearsall in over Romo Dunze. Sunday morning, I took Ricky Pearsall out for Romo Dunze. And I would have beaten, or like I'd be within 29 points with Jalen Waddle left to play. And if Tyreek is out, that's definitely not an insurmountable deficit, especially with all the big play bonuses in my league.
Also, I was ribbing you the whole time last week of like, oh, what happens when a Dunze alpha is DJ Moore? Maybe the answer was this: they're both urine given the offensive context.
Why is the best player that I got in this deal Calvin Ridley? Like,
by the way, appreciate the kind words, Mason. And for the record, we're not doing it at 12 because you got to convince me to get up. We have to talk about some business stuff, which is why we're 15 minutes late. But noon is just a good time. Like maybe people are breaking on work. You know, I'm sure you're probably
everyone's off today. I'm pretty sure in the U.S. It's Remembrance Day here. Also, shout out to
good
all
point.
the people who fought for our country in Canada, for your guys' country in the U.S. Because I know it's not Memorial Day. That's in the, what is it called there? Veterans Day. Veterans Day? Is that what it's called? Yeah, I think it's called Veterans Day in the United States. But yeah, shout out to all the veterans out there.
Yeah, for real.
We could probably move on takeaways wise here. Since I called out Sam Darnold, by the way, I want to just take a mini victory lap. Since I called out Sam Darnold.
Shout out Fluffy at school, by the way.
Okay, he's at school. Since I called out Sam Darnold, he has a 6-7 touchdown to interception ratio and 2 fumbles. The Vikings are still winning games, but they nearly lost to the Jaguars this week. And they also, like, Mickey Mouse won against the Rams on Thursday night. So it's interesting. I mean, I called out Sam Darnold for being a complete fraud.
He had a 6-4 coming into the week. It's going to help when he threw 0 touchdowns to 3 picks this week.
Since the London Jets game, he's been like probably like a bottom 15 quarterback. Like he's not.
Oh, I don't disagree.
He's not been great. Like he had a great, excellent 3-4 week stretch to start the season, but he hasn't really done much since.
Yeah, no, I feel you. But by the way, in the listener league, my ragtag team somehow has a chance to win this week. The team that has Walker, Metcalf, and Nico not in it this week may have it. Oh, and Brian Robinson. But all on my bench are in IR, not playing. May have a chance to win. So hopefully we can get to 7-3. But anyways, that was off the cuff, random. So let's get back.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. What did you think of the Vikings offense yesterday? I noticed that. I mean, Hawkinson was heavily involved, and I was playing him. And Nathan, of course, has had no tight end production all season. And the 1 week that I play him, he has like his elite tight end back to full strength with TJ Hawkinson. Jefferson and Addison didn't.
Who, by the way, he drafted and placed on his IR for 10 weeks this year.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, I can't even talk shit. I traded for Jonathan Brooks. So,
yeah.
Rico Dowdle, too, anyways.
Anyways, what did you think of the Vikings offense?
What I think? It
like going forward, like what do you think of it?
Well, I'll be straight up. 12 points against the Jaguars is not a good fucking look. It's not. Like, Jefferson, not less than 10 PPR points. Jordan Addison, like, 2 catches for 25 yards in this game. I don't know what to make of it, to be honest. Like, I trust that they'll bounce back, but also it's like, if they did this against, a great defense, that would be one thing. It's like, okay, off week, great defense, no problem. they put up 12 points and looked inept at times against the single worst defense in the league.
Yeah, I don't know how people can still, like, people are still doing it, by the way, with Sam Darnold. They're like, well, he still played like an MVP candidate at the beginning of the season. It's like, yeah, that was like the only 4-game stretch of his career where he looked like a franchise quarterback. So
he had a little bit of time in Carolina, to be fair. You remember that?
2 games where he like rushed for 2 touchdowns in each game.
Yeah, no, he had a couple decent plays against the Cowboys on the Panthers that one year. Shout out. Is Brooks done? We'll quickly talk. We are on the Panthers front, so we'll talk quickly on Brooks. I don't think done. The way I kind of described it earlier in the stream is with Sanders now out with the fractured fibula, I think this is going to be a situation where, again, I'm going to see Chuba as the RB1. I'm not going to be delusional and say, yeah, Brooks is going to come back. He's going to not like they paid the guy. He's been a top 5 to 10 running back this year. Hubbard's the RB1 there. But can Brooks be a 10 to 13 touch, third down opportunity, maybe 4 targets a game type of back, like a Jaylen Warren? I think Jaylen Warren would probably be a good comp, like Najee carrying between the tackles, being the true like bell cow with Jaylen Warren spelling him in the receiving game. That's how I think the dynamic could work for Carolina. Again, the unfortunate factor is they could very well just make Chuba their bell cow, but I don't think you draft Jonathan Brooks in the second round if you were expected that coming into the year.
Yeah, I mean, if I was running the Carolina Panthers and Chuba was playing at the level that he's playing at right now, and Brooks is, still coming back from the injury, we want him to be our future at running back. We want him to be.
He's a 2025 play at that point.
He's a 2025 play. So what I would probably do is cap him out 5 to 10 touches a game, and let him get his feet wet, let him get comfortable, realize what the NFL speed is all about, and then come 2025, maybe it's a Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt situation where Brooks is playing the Kareem Hunt role, Chuba Hubbard's playing the Nick Chubb early down grinder role. And that's what we're looking at from Carolina's, fantasy draft standpoint. I think we can talk about Carolina really quick just because they are actually one of my takeaways. I was really impressed with what I saw from Carolina, and not just because they actually looked like a functional offense, because they're finally doing what they should have been doing this entire year, which is Deontay Johnson, Adam Thielen. All these guys are stopgap veterans that don't provide you any real benefit. If they were going to be consummate professionals and do exactly what they were supposed to do and help your young quarterback, that's one thing. And I think Thielen is definitely like that, and Deontay probably not so much. But why not play Xavier Legette 100% of the snaps? Why not play Jalen Coker 100% of the snaps? Why not make Jatavian Sanders your starting tight end? Why not, when Brooks comes back, get him as involved as he can handle in the passing game? And I saw this last year with Dave Canales' offense. It took the Buccaneers time to learn exactly what the offense was going to want to do. And the quarterback as well, Baker Mayfield, started to learn the offense down the stretch of the season. That's why we had that major lull in the middle of last season, just like we're kind of having right now. And then as the schedule eased up, we got a lot better. I think we could see Bryce Young really recoup a lot of dynasty value over the next couple of weeks.
I got to ask you a question, though. With how those young 2 receivers, specifically Coker and Legette, have looked, are you drafting a receiver high now? What are you doing if you're Carolina? Let's just say you have the 3rd overall pick in the NFL draft. Are you taking a quarterback? Are you taking a receiver? Where are you going? Because I don't think at this point Young has showed you enough to completely rule off a quarterback. But that's also the context. Is there a quarterback there that you like that would push Bryce Young out of the building, or is there just somebody that you're hoping can develop into a quarterback? Because if you're drafting a quarterback on the former, that's fine. If you're drafting a quarterback on the latter just because you don't want Bryce to start, then at that point, it's like, well, you have a top 5 level asset that you basically threw into a position that you don't truly believe in. Is Cam Ward going to be a good enough quarterback prospect to take a 3rd overall? Will Shadur Sanders even want to go to Carolina? Is Jalen Milroe worth it? That's where I'm at with it. And on top of that, like I said, then you could go to the route with assuming Travis Hunter's off the board 1st or 2nd overall. Are you drafting Ted McMillan there? Because you already have 2 big-bodied wide receivers that showed you a lot of signs of life this year with Coker and Legette. So I don't know which position that they take. And on top of that, they could very well just go with an edge rusher, but do you also want to devote a defensive asset when you're a team trying to rebuild your offense? There's so many question marks I have.
Yeah, I think where you're picking would dictate a lot of what you do. If you're picking 3rd overall, that means that Bryce sucked the rest of the year and you lost a lot of games and you sucked as an offense, because I think their defense is a little feisty. Again, it's not really good, but it's a feisty enough defense to the point that you got some young players developing on that side of the ball. But if you're picking 10th or 8th or 9th because Bryce won you some games and he showed some signs, then you don't need to pick a quarterback. You probably could take a wide receiver to help out the offense. I don't think there's too many. There's such a thing as you shouldn't take a
Too many
receiver
good
because you have
receivers.
Leggett and Coker. You should take
I
Ted
agree.
McMillan or Burden or whoever if you have the opportunity to, and they're the best player on your board. You could also take an offensive tackle, even though you have two good ones. Like the Carolina Panthers offensive line is
They're
low
good.
key one of the best in the NFL.
Like, dude, I legit think this overall infrastructure, if Bryce was the guy, we would have seen it by now. Because, like, I'm looking at, like, this situation compared to what we were saying going into the year. Like, Coker's playing some great football when he gets consistent snaps. Because if you look at it, is he the most refined receiver at this point? Absolutely not. But what he does for this offense is give them an easy outlet for easy yak. That's what I've seen all the time. Motion him across the formation, get him in the slot, get him on those in breakers. I mean, we saw it even in that game against the Giants, man. He had that one deep dig about 18 yards down the field, makes the catch, gets a couple yards. Like, that's how I want to see Leggett being used. So if he's going to be your primary big slot Z, Coker, again, I think Coker is going to be the biggest one. If you think he can be a primary X for the long term, I don't think receivers as pressing of a need. If you think he's more of like, okay, 3 wide receiver sets, we want him in, but we still need a true X, then at that point, maybe you draft a Ted McMillan. It really, honestly, I think the Carolina draft plan just depends on what happens for the rest of the season, like you said.
Yeah, it's where are you picking? Because if you're picking 10th and because Bryce won you 2 or 3 more games because he was starting to play better, because I don't want to discount that, like, Canales' offense is pretty complicated. And I think if he's playing more confident, which he looks a lot more confident back there than he did earlier in the year, he could win some games, man. I still think he's a talented quarterback. And to me, it's like, okay, maybe you don't want to give Bryce Young, he's the only starter that you have next year, and you're not going to bring in, like, I think what would make more sense as opposed to having an Andy Dalton as your backup quarterback is drafting a 4th round quarterback in the draft.
Honestly, I think, like, I keep throwing this name around, and I think, like, the reason why I throw this name around, not even just because I played against him, but, like, dude, if you can get Rourke in, like, round 3 or round 4, again, he's not the guy that you're going to expect to be the franchise quarterback, but he's a guy that is a smart quarterback. He's a veteran in college. I mean, he's been in Ohio and Indiana. He's been in college. I mean, he's 24 years old, obviously. He's the type of, like, veteran, like, round 3, round 4 rookie. I don't want to say veteran rookie, but, like, older rookie that can kind of take that fall, if you will. Like, if things get really bad and you need to throw him in, I don't think he's going to be overwhelmed, is basically what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no, I could see them also going for, like, a toolsy guy, maybe Jackson Dart's on the board in, like, the 3rd or the 4th round, and they wanted to throw him out there. You called.
So I gotta point this out. It's so hilarious that this is going, and Puka was nothing last season, because you have a thumbnail of a video you said calling Coker the next Puka. So that's pretty hilarious.
Coker's a good player.
I think so too.
Here's the thing. We'll talk about Carolina for, like, one more second here. If you do draft a receiver, I think it should be somebody that complements those guys. If Coker's going to be a big physical ball winner at the, catch point, and Leggett's going to be a yak guy. Isaiah Bond would be an interesting deep threat. I think Luther Burden would be a lot of fun in that offense too. I also think that
the only
you
thing
could
that
probably convince yourself that Egbuka is your chain mover as well. If you were to get a Mecca Egbuka, like, late, you trade down in the 1st round or something like that. They would all be interesting.
The only thing that concerns me about that archetype specifically is I think that's what you drafted Leggett to be. Like, I don't think
but Burden can play both in the slot and at Z, and so can Leggett. So you can move them interchangeably potentially.
I agree. Now, will NFL teams agree? Because, again, I am still high on Burden, but I can see, like you pointed out even yesterday, like, the NFL kind of views this guy as, like, more of a Debo rather than a Jamar Chase type of wide receiver, which is probably going to have him follow. Because, to be honest, like, his usage this year, anytime I watch Missouri, like, they are not using him like they should, straight up. Like, he needs to be used as a 3-level threat wide receiver, run the whole route tree. Instead, they're just makeshifting him into a PPR scam type of role, yak guy type of role, Debo type of role.
I never want to see this guy compared to Laviska Shenault in the offseason. I never want to see it. If I see any analyst compare Luther Burden to Laviska Shenault, I'm instantly unfollowing and blocking them. Like, he's so not that. If you watch the film on him, it's just frustrating that that's how his profile looks right now, because that's how he's being used.
No, 100%. Again, we gave you guys some Dynasty Devy type of preview, and we will actually be doing a full video on this, just kind of briefing through the class, looking at kind of how their seasons are going. I mean, everybody kind of knows Ted McMillan's leading the NCAA in receiving yards right now. Genty's leading the league in rushing yards, but exactly what other context there's going to be, we're going to make sure we dive them down. If either of all you would be free Friday to teach me about the 25 class, that'd be great. I mean, we were literally planning on this, so if you want to hop on, like, feel free, brother.
Yeah,
we will
so
do this.
Mason, I was thinking, me and Danny haven't discussed when we're going to do this, but I was
Yeah.
thinking we could do it tomorrow, Danny, because,
Yeah.
waivers is a relatively easy topic for one of us to cover. Me and
Yeah.
Danny were planning on hopping on a call together and just kind of like hashing out the discussions of, okay, what's the quarterback class looking like? How are the numbers shaping up? Who looks like, the analysts are high on, and so on and so forth. And then same thing for running backs and same thing for wide receivers. So if you wanted to hop in on that, or maybe we could even make it two separate discussions. Like if me and Danny
100%.
want to go through the stacking the board action of that part of it, and then you want to just kind of do like a Q&A as like a separate video for the site, we could definitely do that. And if you guys are site subscribers, of course, you can have access to that. We probably won't post those on YouTube just because I think it's a really niche topic that a lot of diehard dynasty players, which are what our site subscribers usually are, would be interested in. But I think I want to plan to do that, Danny, if we could tomorrow at some point.
That I'm cool with that after I do the waiver video. I want to address this. We're not saying Coker this year in particular is going to be like, oh, he's going to be a top 30 wide receiver rest of the season. He's going to be. We're not saying he's going to be Cedric Tillman, but could he develop into like a Cedric Tillman type of player for this offense? Because he's got some size. He's about 6'1", 6'2", 200 pounds. Can play the outside. Runs through routes at all three levels, moves well in space. Like, we're not saying in fantasy this year he's going to be, this gold mine league winning player. In fact, I'd actually point that to being Leggett, if anybody from this core is going to be, based off his ability after the catch. But in terms of like building an offense long term, I think he can be an NFL starting receiver.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So let's rattle through a couple more takeaways here, Danny. I just wanted to check in on the rookie quarterbacks a little bit, just because we did have like a couple things that have changed in recent weeks. For starters, what the hell is Caleb doing?
He's
I'm
awful
genuinely
right
like, I know Shane Waldron's a problem. I know Matt Eberflus is a problem, but every time I turn on a Bears game, I watch Caleb Williams eat a sack or make a bad throw or make a bad decision, or like he's lost his cape right now.
I will add context to this. So as we know, Caleb, like going into the offseason, the biggest con of his game was he trusts his hero ball a little bit too much. Like, he always tries to overextend plays because, he's naturally gifted. He's naturally talented to be able to make those plays. But the concern was, okay, is he going to keep doing this at the NFL level? I feel like Waldron has severely stunted his growth in terms of doing the easy layups in the offense. We want an offense coordinator that can make the life easy for a rookie quarterback. CJ Stroud, again, he was great as a rookie quarterback, but what Bobby Slowick did well is sequencing him into the game, letting him get comfortable. And then once a quarterback's comfortable, that's when you want to start putting more on his plate, letting him create more out of structure. Because there wasn't any structure in this offense, Caleb feels like he has to do everything out of structure. And to put it simply, he hasn't adapted to NFL speed out of structure fully yet. That's where that's my personal view on this situation, that the structure of Waldron's offense is not even inconsistent. It's just not there. It's not there at all. So these guys are going off script. These guys are trying to make plays out of structure, and you're just not going to do that every time, especially when an NFL defense knows your offense doesn't have structure.
Yeah, it's so weird too, because I think Caleb Williams would have really benefited from doing what Bo Nix has done, and we'll talk about him in a second, which is when it's not there and you don't know what to do.
In your back?
It's like, yeah, there's a train nearby my house.
I heard it.
Driving by. He just ran. That's what Bo Nix was doing. He's like, oh, first read's not there, second read's not there. I'm just going to run until I figure this whole NFL play speed and, what windows I can throw the ball into and all this kind of stuff. I'm just going to run the ball more than I maybe would have once I'm a comfortable, starting level quarterback. And I think Caleb Williams should have been doing that this whole time.
Sorry, I was just thinking of a wild note. You know who's going to be the next head coach for the Bears?
Who?
Cliff Kingsbury.
Oh, God. Yeah, no, that would not be fun. But anyways, from a dynasty standpoint, are you worried about Caleb Williams? Would you still, if you drafted a first, like a startup right now, how high would you draft him?
Let's go through it. It's probably about time we do update our dynasty rankings. So we will, we'll make sure we touch those for this week, because the last time I touched it was 2 weeks ago, and a lot has changed. Because even AJ asked me a question, and I'm like, you know what? Like, I think I've changed view on that. Like, for example, like I had in my dynasty rankings from 2 weeks ago, JSN far behind Tyreek Hill, and the way I contextualize it now is JSN's probably a fringe top 25 to 30 level dynasty receiver. Where does Tyreek rank for you? He's probably a back end 20 to 24 area guy.
Yeah, it's really hard because he's been banged up all year and
Yeah.
he hasn't been playing well. And of course, Tua missed some time there. So, but that's the thing. This is what we always say with guys like Tyreek Hill is like, yeah, when Tyreek Hill gives you 25 points per game or 20 points per game or whatever, yeah, he's worth like
Yeah.
ranking as a top 15 dynasty receiver at that price tag. But the problem is that the second he's not producing at a high level, he's impossible to trade off of your team because he's old.
Yeah. So I'm adjusting them right now. Herbert's going to go back up. Dak with the injury, unfortunately, is going to have to drop for me. I moved Dak to 18 because he's going to be out for the year and he's an older quarterback. Bo Nix is going to have to go up too. Christ, I kind of have him dirt napped a little bit.
Yeah. Would you rather have, I'm assuming you'd rather have Bo Nix than Dak Prescott at this point in time?
I moved Nix to 18. I have Dak now at 19 because the way I view it, and like Trevor's young, so like him getting hurt for the year doesn't impact his value as much as it does for Dak. Because the reason why you would value Dak over Trevor would be the production, and with Dak out, you're not getting the production. So I moved him down to 19, and I think like if you're, I would need a plus to move down to Goff. I still can't. Like we saw last night what it looks like sometimes. I can't. But Tua, Trevor, Baker, Bo Nix, JJ McCarthy at this point, again, once he's fully back next year, I will move him up. But at this point, if you're trading Dak, the asset value just simply is lost with the hamstring injury for an older quarterback. So I moved him down. Again, that was a little bit too much of a yap for Dak, but we will go back.
Yeah, I mean, nobody's worried about Dak's dynasty value right now. I asked you about Caleb if you forgot who I asked you.
Sorry. I was just going through everything. That's why. My bad. So actually, I'm gonna take that off. I moved Caleb down to 12, a quarterback.
So you have one. Is it Herbert the one that you have ahead of him that I don't?
Herbert.
Yeah. If the production was better for Herbert, and it's been better as of late, but if it was better in totality, I still prefer Caleb given the youth factor and the fact that like if Herbert was giving you, great production, I would definitely side with Herbert. But
the thing is, so I have Herbert at 11 right now. And I think you could even make the case of Herbert over Mahomes. Cause when we're looking at Herbert since the bye week, I mean, I've talked about this split before. Now the passing volume, this game particularly, like I thought it'd be higher. Tennessee I don't know how to describe that game environment. There just wasn't a lot of plays overall. Is how I describe that game.
Tennessee has like one of the wildest stats you'll ever see is that they're like number 32 in total points allowed or something like that. But they're also like number 1 in yards allowed. Like it's like you score against them, but you're not getting a lot of yards. It's weird. It's short fields and turnovers and the fact that they're giving up a lot of defensive points and stuff like that. It's weird. They're a really weird defense to stack up.
Because dude, Herbert. Again, this is probably a 6-point passing touchdown league, or even if it's a 4. Herbert since the bye in a 6-point league, 15 and 15 aren't great, but in the last 3 weeks particularly, 32.06, 26.48, 21.76. He scored in a 6-point passing touchdown league yesterday. On 18 pass attempts, he scored over 20 points. Because he's starting to run the ball a little bit too. In 2 of his last 3 games, 32 and 49 rushing yards. Like, if we can see him, he's an athletic enough quarterback where even if he is low passing volume, if he just starts using his legs, he could be a Drake May type of quarterback in terms of fantasy. Obviously, real life,
I guess, but like, does that I think that's fair if you want to factor that in. But like the second Caleb Williams starts like we saw it after the Jacksonville game, like how high were people willing to take Caleb Williams in Dynasty?
No, I don't disagree. I think there's context there, and for the record, that's a tier for me. But like I have Caleb at 12, Herbert at 11, Mahomes at 10. Burrow 9, Love 8, Kyler 7, and then I think the top
Burrow way too low, bro.
Why?
Because Burrow's a machine. That's
why. Fine, rank him at 7. What's the big deal?
I have him at 5, bro.
Okay, so you would take him over probably May and Stroud.
Yeah. That's
okay,
correct.
That's fine. That's fine. And honestly, you can even argue extending the second tier because Mahomes isn't in the same tier as those guys right now based off production, but that's a topic for another day. Jay Daniels at 3, Hurts at 4, Stroud. I'm probably taking. Where do you rank Stroud?
I have Hurts and Burrow over him. So
I have Hurts over him. Where do you rank him though? Because I think you make the case of May, Murray, and Love being over him.
I don't think I could put Murray or Love over him just because they're virtually the same type of assets as far as like what the NFL dynasty community thinks of them. But if you wanted to convince me on the upside of May potentially going there,
I'm so May pilled straight up. Like
I am too. Yeah. Like I love Drake May as well, but I still have
Yes.
some reservations that Drake May is going to get built around. That's my issue with Drake May right now. Is like, I don't really trust the Patriots to build around him properly. That's the only thing I worry about with Drake.
But even still, he's averaging what, 18 or 19 points per game with that situation right now. Like,
Yeah, he's a complete stud. Like I won't argue with you there.
what's so Purdy's at 13. What do you mean disrespect?
Yeah, Purdy's a good option. Purdy is the head of the next tier for me, which is like the Mayfield
JJ
and
Nix,
like Trevor Lawrence's once he's back, Tua Tagovailoa. If you want to throw Bo Nix into that category now, you could definitely do it.
it's
But yeah,
so
I
funny.
think comfortably Purdy is behind those other guys.
Yeah, like it's so funny with Purdy. Like the 4 guys in a row for me, you can all make the case are like different eras or not eras, different shades of Purdy, if you will. So you got Brock Purdy, then you got JJ McCarthy, then you got Bo Nix, and then you got Baker Mayfield, and they're all different shades of each other.
Yeah. If you ask me who's playing the best ball out of all those guys, though, it's Baker. Baker's been the best fantasy production wise out of those guys. It hasn't even really been close.
Yeah. Also, I think you could very well make that conversation from a fantasy football asset standpoint. If May is running the way he has been in his rookie year and they add receivers to him, we're not even just going to be talking about May over Stroud. We're talking about May in the discussion with like Allen and shit as 101. If he gets weapons and if he keeps playing the way he has been, to be honest. Like, dude, and the numbers don't look great. Don't get me wrong. People are going to look at the numbers like, oh, he only had like 12 fantasy points last. If you watch the games, dude, the way he creates out a structure for that team, it's his best receiver is Pop Douglas. And I like Pop Douglas. He's a good receiver. He's not a fucking number 1.
Yeah, no, Pop Douglas, they need Ted McMillan in the worst way possible. Like or Travis Hunter or whatever. Like they need somebody. Is there a better free agency signing this offseason than Baker? I would argue that the Bucs re-signing Antoine Winfield, Tristan Wirfs, Mike Evans, and Levante David were all equally very good signings. This is what Tampa Bay does, man. It's a Jason Light masterclass every single offseason.
Yeah, sorry. Last thing I'll address, we'll talk about our last 2 takeaways quick, and then we'll get into the trades and stuff. But what are the odds that May pulls a Mac Jones?
Very low.
If Mac Jones was 30 pounds heavier, 3 inches taller, and had 90% more arm
and athleticism too.
And they're completely different quarterbacks.
The only worry, if you mean by pulling a Mac Jones, the Patriots can't build around him, that would be my one concern for Drake May. But as I've seen from Drake May so far, like, man, like he can elevate some bad players.
Like, what even is his downside case at this point? Trevor Lawrence? Is that crazy to say?
His downside case is precisely Trevor Lawrence.
Like, when your downside is Trevor Lawrence and your upside is being the 101 Josh Allen at 22 years old, maybe you should be a middle of the first round type of startup pick. I don't know. Just me, maybe.
But I think we could probably move.
I'll quickly say these
last couple takeaways because they're more NFL stuff anyways, but we should probably move on to the Dynasty trade since we're talking Dynasty.
I mean, one of them Lions look like they're in a tier of their own right now. We've seen what it looks like for the Lions when everything goes right, when they're operating, when they're beating teams like the Cowboys 47-9. It looks fantastic. But in a game where you throw 5 interceptions and you have no business winning, that's when you learn about, okay, who are the elite teams in the NFL? Who, when the game is completely going away from them, what was the turnover margin yesterday? 5-0 or 5-2 or whatever the fuck it was? Not 5-0.
I mean, Goff played probably the worst game of his life yesterday.
And they were down 23-7 at halftime. They couldn't get anything going on offense. And then they found a way to win. That's straight up what I saw with the Lions. I think at this point in the season, again, could the Ravens beat them in the Super Bowl, or the Chiefs beat them in the Super Bowl, or maybe an NFC team gets hot and gives them a good game in the end? Absolutely. But at this current point in the year, I don't think there's a team in the tier of the Lions right now.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you. And it's going to be interesting because to me, like, I think we just might be on a crash course for a Kansas City Detroit Super Bowl where it's David versus Goliath. Everybody's rooting against the three-peat. And it's almost like the 90 Super Bowl where the Giants beat the three-peat. Or sorry, was that the NFC champion? That was the NFC championship where they beat the 49ers who were going for a three-peat. And everyone,
which year?
like, it was 1990, I think, where the 49ers were going for their third straight Super Bowl, and the Giants with Jeff Hofstetler or whatever won that game and then went on to beat the Bills in the Super Bowl
Wide left.
on the wide right fucking
Wide
play
right, sorry. Yeah.
But yeah,
wide left or wide right?
That NFC Championship game was like notorious. Everybody was rooting for the Giants. Nobody wanted to see the 49ers win again. And I could see the Super Bowl this year being Lions versus Chiefs. Everybody's rooting for the Lions.
Well, I mean, we could even talk about it a few years later. Cowboys made the Super Bowl 2 years in a row, won 2 years in a row. The third year in between, that sandwich between, was the 49ers beating the Cowboys at the end. And that was when Steve Young was saying, like, that was the year that Steve, well, because he won the Super Bowl and that's when he did the monkey off his back. But really, like, everybody in the NFL knew the true Super Bowl was Niners versus Cowboys that year because whoever won that game was going to smoke the Chargers.
Yeah. And leave it to Danny to make that about the Cowboys somehow.
Well, I think it's similar though, because it's like
it is. No, I'm
like,
just fucking with you, but it was kind of funny that you turned that into a Cowboys thing.
But
yeah, I mean, the same way that the Lions just find way to win games. I mean, Kansas City getting lucky and blocking a field goal is the exact same situation, and I still can't believe that happened. Like the Chiefs should have lost back-to-back weeks. Like we should have beaten them, and the Broncos should have beaten them.
Yeah, pretty remarkable. I mean, we'll just get right into it. I have a takeaway here. Steelers and Chiefs have actual devil magic. I don't know what it is, this black magic. I don't know what prayers they're saying at night, what deities they're attracting around their house. I don't know what the fuck they're doing. But both win games by 2 or less that they straight up should have lost. Starting with the Steelers, I mean, late stop against Washington. We were just talking about how it blew your parlay. Uncharacteristic Commander offensive showing. Like the Commanders' offense looked lost in that game. Jane Daniels' worst game as a pro. They ran the ball for like 3 yards per carry. The Steelers just always win these games. They're 7-2, and they have a loss to the Cowboys this year, dude. Like that should dictate what caliber of team they should be right now. And on top of that, I mean, like they're 7-2, and one of their losses was really on a last-second fucking touchdown. They could be 8-1, dude. The Steelers could be 8-1 right now. The most disgusting thing I've ever seen. On top of that, I mean, the Chiefs are 9-0 right now, despite Mahomes having his lowest passing yards per game of his career, lowest pass rating of his career. He's pacing right now for 23 passing touchdowns, which would also be the lowest of his career. I mean, I'm sure you already know that, but
I'm very well aware that Patrick Mahomes can't do anything on offense right now.
The Chiefs are just fancy Pittsburgh. That's what they are. They're fancy
Pittsburgh. And remember when Pittsburgh were they like 10-0 at one point, like 3 years ago?
Yeah.
And then they got wiped by the Browns in the playoffs. And then Chase Claypool went on like a live and was like, oh, they're going to get smoked by the Chiefs anyway. And then that's when we learned that Chase Brown's is the fucking nincompoop.
Yeah.
Chase Brown. Sorry, Chase Claypool, different Canadian.
Yeah. Shout out the Canadians named Chase, big boys. And then
let's do the Jets. Let's talk about the Jets quick, and then we'll move off of the takeaways.
We're done after this one. The Jets, just when I start to have some trust again, great game against the Texans. You know, Rodgers looking good. That connection between him and his 2 receivers. Brees Hall not having a great game, but like projecting forward. Oh my God, look at the schedule. I have no trust with these guys. And point blank simply, they can join Dallas on prospect watch because their season is fucking over. That team is a train wreck. Straight up, when I'm going through this, their offense leaves me in tears at this point. Their passing game isn't working. Braylon is being forced touches for no reason. He's averaging 3.5 a pop, but let's keep feeding him the fucking football when Brees Hall's averaging over 5 yards per carry. Your best offensive player is touching the ball 14 times in a game. You lost 31-6. Like, what the fuck are we actually doing? Brees Hall has been the most efficient player on their team all year, because Wilson, beginning of the year, a little bit inefficient, has been good since Adams came over. Adams has been like on and off all year. I mean, he had the one good game, but hasn't been good since he's come over. Brees Hall has been their most consistent player year to year, and he hasn't been consistent. So straight up, when I'm looking at the personnel in this offense, they should be so much better than they are, especially given the schedule. I have Brees Hall in so many spots, and I can't even get excited about this schedule because of how dysfunctional this fucking team is.
This should have been like a legacy game for Brees Hall. Like he should have had 30 fantasy points in this game. Like I don't know what to do with the Jets at this point. I think very clearly, if I were running the Jets, you have to get rid of Rodgers, man. You have to get rid of him after this year. Whether he retires or not, he's gone. Like you can't keep him around. This also, I know Danny does this whole thing where he makes everything about the Cowboys. I can't help but make this about the Bucs a little bit, where Tom Brady went over and won a Super Bowl and was the ultimate teammate and elevated the play of everybody around him. And Aaron Rodgers has done the exact opposite of that with the Jets. He's made them like more unwatchable than Zach Wilson Jets.
He's too busy taking substance retreats in the offseason.
How the heck has this team, and I use that word very loosely because
sorry, Ron.
Quincy Williams is celebrating big hits on Kyler Murray, and 4 plays later they're in the end zone. You know what I mean? Like they're all like individuals playing for themselves. Sauce Gardner's quote tweeting people.
Did you see him get bitched by Trey McBride?
Dude, why were they more of a team when Zach Wilson was the quarterback? Like Zach Wilson was like objectively.
You know why that is? They still bought into Robert Saleh. They lost Robert Saleh this year. Ulbrich has not been able to take on the head coach standing. Like he got that one win against the Texans. Cool, rah. When Ulbrich's just focusing on his defense, it looks good. When Ulbrich has to take on head coaching duties on top of that, that's when you see the defense give up 31 against the Cardinals.
I think this is a situation where if I was Woody Johnson right now and I was running the Jets, buy Aaron. It's been real. Like you can go to a new team, you can retire. I don't really care. We need to get a new regime. Joe Douglas gone. Like, I mean, you missing on Zach Wilson's you miss on a top quarterback. You should be fired anyways, to be honest. That's just realistically how it goes with being a GM. You drafted some good players, Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, Sauce Gardner, whatever. You drafted a bunch of good players, but you need a complete top to bottom regime change and probably a quarterback draft pick as well. Like you probably need to go back in the draft and draft a quarterback high, most likely. That's probably what I would do at least.
Yeah.
And he needs to be nails above the shoulders. You need a leader. You need a field general. Like go and talk to high school coaches of Cam Ward and Shadur Sanders and
you know what they're going to do,
Jalen
right?
Milroe and all the quarterback prospects you could possibly go after. Maybe you just go into the second or the third round, draft a quarterback, get a veteran stopgap. But to me, you need a franchise QB. The only thing that will save this franchise is hitting on a Drake May, Jaden Daniels, somebody like that.
You know what they're going to do?
What?
They're going to spend their first round pick on an edge rusher or a defensive lineman or someone like that. They're going to go in the second round and they're going to draft what they believe to be Rodgers Jr. because he's got a similar-ish release. You know who I'm talking about? Who am I talking about? What's the one saving grace of a quarterback prospect because of the way it flicks off his wrist?
Is it Carson Beck?
No. You should know.
I don't. I'm drawing a blank.
Brother, you watch this guy more than anybody in the chat.
Quinn. Quinn's not.
They're going to convince themselves of it.
I think it would be cool actually if Quinn was a Jets quarterback because he totally seems like a Jets quarterback, to be honest.
Dude, I can see yours on the back of a green jersey.
They need somebody the polar opposite of Quinn, to be honest.
I don't disagree, but they're going to watch the release and Rodgers is going to be like, you know what? I could teach that guy a thing or two about substance abuse. But
they should never let Rodgers. You know the video of the one Jets lineman or whatever that got locked out of the building? That needs to be Rodgers after this year, bro. He needs to be locked out of that building.
Bro, being caught in the clip like that, you know you're going to be fucking toasted on social media for the rest of your career if you make a mistake.
Yeah. No, dude, I don't know what the hell the Jets think they could do. If they go into next season with Aaron Rodgers again and Aaron Rodgers gets to lead the coaching search and find his next coach or whatever, you are screwed as a franchise. Like you have to get this guy out of there. You have to.
Man, I get to talk shit about the Jets when my team is just also dysfunctional, but at least I know when Dak is back, I can trust Dak. Like what can you trust?
You need a coaching regime change. And
I think we'll be good after this year if we do the right things in the offseason.
So you heard me talk shit about your team all offseason where I was like, hey, if you guys lose a couple players to injury, your team is fucked. That's what I said.
Lost more than a couple.
Yeah. Well, but still, I was like, the reason I think you're fucked is because unlike, my team, at least my team still looks very competitive when we lose players. At least we can still put up fights against good team because we're well coached. But your team isn't well coached. So if you don't have CeeDee Lamb playing like a first team All-Pro, you don't have Dak Prescott playing like an MVP, you don't have the flexibility to have your players play above their talent levels.
Well, I will add to that too a little bit. With the Cowboys, I think the reason why Mike even made it this far is because there was that 5-game stretch where they looked competent without Dak. Like the defense was playing great. Rush wasn't great, but like he was at least maintaining the offense. And I think Jerry probably like thought, oh, you know what? Like, I'm going to keep him involved because he showed at least he has grit to keep the team together during a bad stance. This team is cooked. It looks like 2019 Jason Garrett level cooked. It looks like nobody believes in Mike. Nobody believes in what they're doing. Now that you lose Dak, now that, Lamb's playing, but he's probably banged up a little bit. Like, he made a couple plays, but which pretty remarkable. He had over 8 PPR points on an offense that threw 66 yards, but I digress.
PPR scam. CeeDee Lamb.
Legitimately, it's 6 catches for 21 yards, dude. CeeDee Lamb had 6 catches for 21 yards. Literally. And when you have a situation where CeeDee Lamb is looking like Wan'Dale fucking Robinson, that is the issue. Also, if I see Belichick to Dallas, if Belichick is the guy that they choose, I don't think I'm going to make it through the 2025 season.
I don't know. Having the greatest coach of all time doesn't seem like the worst possible outcome for you guys.
I mean, how is it going to A, affect our draft? B, we are an offensive team. Who's going to run the offense? Is Belichick going to bring like Alex Van Pelt over? Like, fuck.
Get ready to learn Josh McDaniels.
Oh my, yeah, we're going to turn into the
Bill O'Brien's going to be your OC.
We're going to turn into the 2018 Patriots where they got Tom Brady throwing the ball 23 times a game.
Oh, dude. Nah, honestly, for the Jets and for the Cowboys, if you get the right head coach in, that would go a long way. For the Jets, you probably need the right head coach and the right quarterback, which is a lot easier said than done, because I think sometimes people think, oh, getting the right head coach is like an easy thing to do. No, it's like almost just as hard as getting the right quarterback in there, man. Like it's difficult.
Dude, I will personally do whatever Ben Johnson needs to come over to Dallas. I will what do you need? Do you need a free consultation for your fantasy? Like, what the fuck do you need, Ben? I will be able to go to your service.
He doesn't want to work with Dak. What is your answer? Do you still want Ben Johnson? I'm just joking.
I mean, if he said, listen, I will come coach your team, but we're drafting a running back in the top 10, I'll be like, you know what? Fucking do you, brother. Do you?
Yeah. Welcome to Dallas, Ashton Genty. Anyways, let's talk about some dynasty trades here, pivot off of the takeaways. We did talk a lot about the dynasty market here, but I do want to break down a couple trades submitted by you guys every morning. Mondays, we farm out to you on Twitter and talk about some dynasty trades here. Chuck was the first one that I want to talk about here. Half PPR, he's in first place with the most points scored and wanted a productive wide receiver for this season. Keep in mind, he does have a Chiefs PFP of Patrick Mahomes. So he did trade for Rashee Rice and DeAndre Hopkins. Again, productive wide receiver. I'm assuming he means Hopkins there. And he sold off Chris Olave, Keenan Allen, in a second rounder. So, I mean, when you stack up this trade, Danny, what does it look like to you? I mean, to me, I don't know where I'm at with Olave's dynasty value right now, because I'm really worried about the concussion issues. I'm really worried about the injury stuff and that kind of thing. But I think the risk that you inherit with Rashee Rice versus Chris Olave is a lot more easy to project, which is why I kind of like Rice over Olave in Dynasty in general. And also, too, I mean, the production was better when Rice was on the field versus Olave.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have this conversation. Is Olave a top 25 Dynasty wide receiver at this point?
He's very difficult to project, man. It's just like with Tua. When Tua, we had all these concussion issues. We're like, where the hell do we rank Tua among dynasty quarterbacks? But only it's like probably worse because Olave is a receiver and he gets hit more.
We'll rank these 3 assets moving forward: Brandon Ayuk, Rashee Rice, Chris Olave.
Olave's third.
I agree.
There's precedent on Brandon Ayuk, and like Brandon Ayuk, first of all, has a huge contract, so I know he's staying for San Francisco for a while. Rashee Rice didn't actually tear his ACL, so it's less of a recovery standpoint. He's probably going to get suspended at some point, but I think by mid to late 2025, Rashee Rice might be back to where we all thought he was probably going to be in the first place. Whereas Chris Olave, there's a lot more ambiguity. Number one, he still has Derek Carr as his quarterback, presumably next year. And also, too, he has one more concussion away from never playing football again or whatever. Maybe he's never going to play again to begin with. It's not a good situation at all for Chris Olave dynasty managers at this point.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, again, there should be context there, right? If he's acquiring the Hopkins side, first place, most points scorer, one a productive receiver. If that's the case, I mean, DeAndre Hopkins is your perfect guy. I think you can acknowledge this at this point that, dude, DeAndre Hopkins is here to stay. And I know it wasn't the craziest box score game this week against Denver, which we never expected going in because it was a tough matchup. We knew, I literally said on the live chat, I think it's going to be a Kelsey game. Sure enough, it was very much a Kelsey game. DeAndre Hopkins is the clear-cut, only usable wide receiver on the Chiefs outside of Travis Kelce right now. So the rest of the season, I think he's got to be at the very minimum in the wide receiver 2 range. Very minimum.
Yeah, I think once Juju comes back, he might have something to say. I honestly think he might take over that slot role again and be semi-productive. And I actually have him on the top 10 waivers that I'm going to talk about on my TikTok tomorrow. But it's worth it. I mean, if you're stacking this up, and like some people in the chat are being like, "Hey, are you not worried about Ayuk's recovery?" I'm like, wide receivers come back from ACL recoveries, all the time. Like I know it's going to affect his next season production. It's not ideal, but head injuries are a whole different beast, man. They're case by case basis. Olave is a small dude, man. He's not a big receiver. He's the type of guy that, like, Brandon Cooks or some of these other guys, like, you got to be really worried about your health long term. And because he's still very young and he's had this many concussions in this short of a time, it's not fun to think about.
Sorry, I didn't mean to smile while you're talking about concussions. By the way, I just read something on my phone. I am very much not happy about the situation. In fact, I do empathize with Chris Olave. I do empathize with any player that has dealt with concussions, because they are not fun to recover from, especially when you're going through it, man, and you want to be out there for your boys. And it's not a physical impalement, but it's a mental impalement. Is impalement the right word? Impairment. Impalement's literally like when a spear goes through your chest. No, that's like you're getting impaled. But yeah, impairment. Sorry. It's a mental impairment, straight up. Like, there's physical damage to your brain, but it's more so like mentally, when can you get back to being on schedule is the best way I describe it. It's almost like, when you go out in public and you forget to bring a grocery list and you're trying to scavenge together, like, what exactly you need to get onto your grocery list. But imagine that, but it's a playbook. And you're trying to remember exactly what's going on with the playbook. And not only do you have to remember, A, the calls on the field, B, the plays when they're happening, you also got to understand the timing, like what's your motion looking like on this play? What is the overall sequence of this row? Because obviously, as we know, in terms of scheming, offensive scheming in the NFL, everything on the field is in relation to the other to attack gaps on the defense. As a receiver specifically, if it's taking you a second to process what's going on, even when you are fully capable physically to return, that's the mental hurdle you got to get over. And I mean, I don't know. It's unfortunate. Also, we can't really speak on the injury without more knowledge.
New Orleans too, like, that's a whole nother can of worms that he might be like, I'm not playing for that franchise again. I don't want to play with that quarterback. Like, does he hold out or something? Like, there's a lot of shit that could go wrong with Chris Olave's dynasty value over the next calendar year.
Yeah. And dude, that comparison is exactly when concussions go. We're literally, dude. And I've talked about it on my own right. It's not even just like from a football aspect. Like, even when I have my concussions, dude, like, just mental day-to-day scheduling and lack of, like, oh fuck, I can't believe I missed track of time there. Or, like, time management, everything in your life is just completely impacted. And again, maybe it was a little bit too much of a sob session talking about it, but like, I gotta give you guys the information if you guys haven't dealt with it before. It's like, people think, oh yeah, it's a blow to the head, you recover, you're fine. Like, no, like, there's so much shit that goes on behind the scenes that you got to go overcome.
Yeah, I'll take ACL recovery over fucking concussion issues any day of the week.
It's not
fun, and it wipes away like a year and a half of their playing time with Ayuk and potentially Rashee Rice. We don't know exactly what the extent of his injury is, as far as like is it gonna be the same as like an ACL recovery normally is. But yeah, it's not in a good spot for Chris Olave. But anyways, we could probably move on to Wanye's trade here. He said, my team is completely tanking with the 101 most likely. This deal was made right after the Chuba contract. So Wanye striked while the iron was hot went out and bought Jonathan Brooks for Zach Charbonnet and Troy Franklin. I think Charbonnet and Brooks is actually maybe even a really good comp for each other, because I think they were relatively comparable as prospects, and both guys got hit.
Brooks is more explosive, though.
Yeah, but I really liked Charbonnet as a prospect, man. I thought he was, legitimate second-round caliber dude, and that's exactly what Brooks was as well. Yep. Charbonnet is coming into the time where, a year from now, give or take, maybe he's working into like a full workload with Seattle. Maybe they don't re-sign Kenneth Walker, whatever the case is. Whereas Jonathan Brooks is kind of just beginning that journey where Chuba Hubbard looks like he's going to be a problem or a pest or whatever for at least the next half year this year and probable full year next year, if not longer.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good comp for it. Now, I would still take the Brooks side because I just don't really value Franklin, and I think Brooks has higher upside, specifically as a receiver out of the backfield, because although Charbonnet, I think, is capable of it, we have seen Walker take on more of a 3-down workload. I do think with them drafting Brooks, I mean, then again, they drafted Charbonnet right after they took Walker, but I don't know. Like it actually is a pretty good comp. Now I do think
I
Brooks has more
honestly
upside
think
with
it's a
that being
lot,
said.
like at face value with what we thought of Brooks before. I'm trying to like take that out of the back of my mind right now, because easily
Yeah.
before this, we would have said smash deal, great deal, awesome on Brooks, go buy him low. But I actually think there's routes and upside for the other side of this deal to pay off. While Troy Franklin is not, looking like he's going to have a great rookie season, he was extremely young coming into the year. So I don't want to make any sweeping declarations about the kid until the season is done. And also with Charbonnet, like I said, he might just be Brooks, only he's fast tracked a year past or 2 years past where Brooks is now, which is he might actually get a full workload next year or the year after or whatever. Whereas Brooks might have 2 more years of being in a committee backfield like Charbonnet.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good way to describe it. Now, with that being said, I will always pay Franklin if that's the cost to upgrade to a guy that I think has a higher ceiling range of outcome. I think like more than likely the median range of outcome is a Charbonnet type, which is unfortunate. But at the same time, if he does reach that 80th, 90th, 100th percentile outcome, I still think he has the receiving capabilities to work into the backfield, which we just simply haven't seen with Charbonnet with how they've used him and Walker. Walker's taken on more of a 3-down workload this year. He's actually getting receiving usage. And this was like, if you were a Charbonnet fan coming in like us, this is probably the worst possible run out for Charbonnet in that they're trusting Walker on 3 downs now.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, generally speaking, just quickly on Brooks, because I think he's the major like time sensitive piece of this deal that we should be talking about. Where are you at as far as like, are you buying, are you selling, are you holding on Jonathan Brooks dynasty shares right now?
I'm holding, because if you're selling, I feel like people are going to use the recent Chuba extension and try to lowball you. But am I confident enough in the projection moving forward, especially with the amount of shares that I have, to go out and buy more? No.
Yeah. See, the nice thing for me is, by the grace of God, I didn't get many shares at all. I have 1 share of him. I'm in a lot of leagues. I have 1 share of him, and that is in our No Flocking league. And I got him, I believe, at the 201 or something. So he actually slid to me a little bit. I don't feel great about what happened with Jonathan Brooks, to the point that I'm like, oh, because I don't have that many shares, I'm going to go buy a ton of shares now. I actually think that this puts him squarely in like the mid RB2 range of dynasty rankings.
If not a little bit lower.
Yeah, well, and then like, especially once we get the rookies in for 2025,
let's have a conversation here. I mean, you're easily taking at the very minimum in this past class, you're taking Tyrone Tracy over him very comfortably. Very comfortably.
That's a crazy thing to think about, but you're probably correct.
Like, I don't even think it's a I think you can make the case that Tracy's a fringe top 12 dynasty running back now with the workload he's getting, with the talent that we're seeing.
I worry that he gets nuked by a 2025 running back.
See, given the draft capital, I think that would be a possibility. But every time I hear Brian Daboll talk about him, the one thing he always keeps coming back to is he's great in the locker room and he's earned his reps. And Daboll is a merit guy. If you've earned your reps, like,
if Daboll's still there,
that's a good point. Now that's a good point. He could go. Now the Giants would be faded if they do fire.
They would be, but that's possible. Like this year is going to be just like any other year that we talk about this. When you have like extra running backs on your roster that you maybe don't need to hold through the draft and take that risk, and you could sell them in January or in February when their production is still fresh in people's minds, that might be something that's wise to do. Shed the production, replenish in the draft, this class is so good at running back, man.
Dude,
if you cash out on a bunch of running backs that are like middling level guys that you don't really feel comfortable in, like, Najee Harris's and so on and so forth, and you can cash out for early to mid seconds or mid to late seconds, even in some cases, and you could just re-roll into rookies in this year's class, like, you'd probably be wise to do that in a lot of cases, just because this class could nuke a lot of starting jobs around the league.
Yeah, no, I agree for sure. And I mean, we could just go on to the next deal here. This one is from B Cube, 10 team Superflex start 10, getting ETN with an early second. Think it's enough return for the package ? So, I mean, let's equate this. Obviously, Chuba, the other side of that extension, 4 years, 33 million, has played like a top 5 to 10 level running back this year. Where is his dynasty value at, and why should Brooks be anywhere close to above him?
Well, to me, this is Hopkins and Hill for a second and a third cancels out. So who would you rather have, Chuba Hubbard or Travis Etienne in Dynasty? That is the conversation point here.
Call me crazy. I think the answer is Chuba.
It's like, so I would still prefer Travis Etienne by a hair, but it is also like, I don't like, I don't know. Like that's a close conversation because like I think it's been
not
a
for me.
horrible, brutal run out for Travis Etienne, and it's been a great run out for Chuba Hubbard. But can I sit here right now with a straight face and say that I would trade away Chuba Hubbard for Travis Etienne in Dynasty? No. However, I can say that I think generally Travis Etienne is a decent buy low in Dynasty.
Okay, but that wasn't the question. The question is, who would you rather rank higher, Chuba or Etienne? And I think the answer is very clearly Chuba. Even if you have to make a trade right now, first and foremost, Chuba is absolutely the ones that's going to be more productive for the rest of the season.
Yeah, and
On
he's
top of
definitely
that,
gonna. I think the
he's
market would
re-signed.
agree he's the more valuable of the two right now.
He's re-signed to a contract. Etienne is probably on his way out. Which, to be fair, you can also argue like we've seen players after their rookie contracts land in another place. Like the actual data to that recently has been better than it was 5 years ago, for example. Like we've talked about second contract running backs for a while being someone we want to avoid, but we've seen in the last couple of years that guys have actually emerged. Like, for example, I mean, technically Mixon was in the middle of his second contract or going into his third, but he gets dealt. Derrick Henry, these older running backs going on to the next. Josh Jacobs, another one. Like, there's more of a sample now of them actually doing well because the way I would contextualize it is the teams that are now signing them to these deals have a plan in place for how they want to use their skill sets. So they're not just targeting a running back to fill the void of needing guys that can create touch or handle touches. They're targeting running back specifically for their system. Barkley to the Eagles, perfect match. Mixon to the Texans, perfect match. Jacobs to the Packers. So for me personally, like Etienne could land on a perfect match situation and completely recapture that dynasty value. But with the certainty of the deal and with how he's been playing, like, where's Chuba going to be drafted in redraft last year or next year?
Did they pick up his fifth-year option?
Etienne?
Because I would argue right now, to be honest, that there is absolutely no better landing spot for Travis Etienne than staying exactly where he is. Because if he has another year of his rookie deal left, if they picked up his fifth-year option, healthy Trevor Lawrence with a new coaching staff, even if Tank Bigsby's involved next year and it's a 65...
They picked up his option. So he's got one more year left at $6 million in 2025. And then he's a free agent the year after at 27 years old.
Honestly, I don't like...
Don't say you would take Etienne over Chuba.
No, I wouldn't. I would take Chuba, especially if you are in a... But he also mentioned, too, that he was in not a competitive situation, if I'm not mistaken. No, he didn't mention that at all. But if you are not in a competitive situation, I would take the ETN side because you're getting the draft pick. First of all, you're getting off of DeAndre Hopkins, moving that production, removing the Chuba production. I think it implies that he is not in a competitive situation, given
it's also
why
a 10
he would be
team.
making this.
It's also a 10 team. So like the picks overall, like technically they're higher, but like they also get devalued on surface level though, because it is a shallower league. It's like, personally, I would have charged a little bit more if I was selling Chuba, but I understand why you would do the deal. Is where I'm at with it.
Like, again, if I was to give a stance of what I'd be doing with ETN shares right now, the answer is buying.
I don't disagree.
I'd be buying him right now.
Like, I don't disagree. Like, I think he's
first round pedigree running back who has been very good prior to this year and has dealt with injuries on a bad team with bad coaching staff. He's going to be on a better situation next year. And I know I do this every year with Jacksonville where I think they're going to be better than they are and they end up disappointing. They're like just that team for me where I feel like I want them to be better than they like. They're like the new Chargers.
The Jags and the Jets, baby.
Yeah. It's just, I just tend to think that the Jags, hopefully, if they get a good head coaching hire, can figure things out because I still believe in the quarterback.
This is going to sound disgusting, but I also think this is like a pretty one-sided answer. Swift or ETN in Dynasty? I think the answer is very easily Swift.
I still have ETN ranked higher.
Why though? Swift has the deal. We just saw Khalil Herbert get dealt. It's a two-man backfield with him and Roshan, despite us being high on the draft cycle, has pretty much cemented himself as the pass blocking back, the short yardage back, whereas DeAndre Swift has been used very efficiently on that team.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I think you're probably onto something there. Swift has got another year or two on a pretty decent sized contract, but he also nobody's safe in the NFL from this running back class, man. Nobody's safe. It feels like
that's fair. That is fair. But yeah, I mean, that was a good talk to have because obviously there is a lot changing in Dynasty. So like those preconceived notions we had coming into the year are severely being challenged at this point because, I mean, it happens every year. Like
especially at running back, man, when like if the volume's going one way, like it skews the running back landscape. Because like I just objectively think Travis Etienne is still a top 15 running back in the NFL. When healthy, I think he can still play at a very high level.
You're going to hate me for saying this. Is he objectively better at this point than Rico Dowdle?
Than Rico Dowdle?
Rico's been good this year.
Get out of here, dude.
Rico's been good this year.
Rico stinks.
He's been better than ETN this year.
Yeah. ETN was a first-round pick, and he was very productive for 3 years before this year.
Sure.
I'm talking in totality, whole career sample, how many running backs?
I was talking about right now. I was talking about right now.
Yeah, today Etienne's playing through injury on a bad team. I mean,
he's not a top 15 running back in the NFL right now.
No, probably not. I don't know. I think he can get back to that, I guess is my point. Yeah, like if he's like a 7th round best ball pick and he's back in Jacksonville and they have a new offensive coordinator and it's him and Tank Bigsby, Etienne's a 7th round pick, Tank Bigsby's a 9th round pick, I'm going to have a lot of shares of Etienne, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. Sorry, people are just enjoying the fact that A, I had to throw a Cowboy in there, and B, the fact that it's actually a conversation is just disgusting. If you're,
it's not a conversation. Chat, back me up here.
Dowdle's good, dude. Now you're tweaking, dude. Dowdle's been fucking really efficient, and keep in mind the offensive line has not played well.
Okay, whatever,
dude. No. When you get a chance, actually look at Dowdle's efficiency metrics this year. They've been good.
He's been doing the job that they've asked him to do. But Rico Dowdle provides you absolutely nothing beyond getting what's there.
What? He's been one of the highest success rate running backs in the league this year.
I don't know, man. More power to you if you're a Rico Dowdle truther.
I'm just saying this year, guys, relax. I know, the Cowboys can draft a running, but I'm saying just based off play this year, not the asset in Dynasty. Dowdle's been playing well. I don't think he's a great Dynasty asset. That's not what I'm saying. He's played good football.
But you said who's better, and I said Etienne.
I said this year, Rico's been absolutely better than Etienne.
Sure. This year, Rico's been better than Etienne.
Okay.
There's been very good running backs that have not played that well this year.
That is all I fucking said, though. Like, I'm not saying he's a better asset than Etienne.
Yeah. This year, I'm trying to think who's like a middling running back that's playing well.
Jordan Mason, baby.
Yeah, this year, Jordan Mason's been better than Breece Hall.
Relax.
Like, it's probably accurate, but he's not better than Breece Hall. We all know that.
Yeah. I think people call me crazy. I don't think the Cowboys have to draft a running back early. I don't. I think they can draft a 4th round guy, supplement Rico touches, and be fine.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you. But let's break down some early waiver stuff.
Because this would be objectively hilarious, by the way.
Yeah, it would be really funny, to be honest.
We do have one more trade quickly, and then again, we won't.
No, we got them all.
No, there's one that Fled asked us to go over quick.
Okay.
So he submitted this in the group chat, and he texted me. He's like, "Can you quickly talk about this one too?" So we will talk about it. He ended up making a deal here, I believe, that's going to be processed. So Penix, Caleb, a 3rd, and a 2026 first. Doesn't give context on whether this first is going to be, but assuming the team that is buying Burrow, Tracy, and stuff is adding some competitive assets. Again, we don't have the knowledge that that's a different first, so I'm just going to be assuming it's from the guy getting Burrow, Bateman, and Tracy. So I would say that's probably about a mid to late projection, assuming his team doesn't completely crumble after the year. So we're going with the context here. Penix, Caleb, mid to late 2025 3rd, mid to late 2025 or 26 first, in exchange for Burrow, Bateman, Tracy, a 3rd, and a 4th. And I think there's context to both sides. If you're competing, I think I want the Burrow side, but if you're not competing, I think that's a fine price to sell those assets for. It's close.
You won't find a bigger Burrow guy than me, but I think I'm taking the Caleb side pretty comfortably. I still believe in Caleb. I believe in Penix too. I think Penix is one of the best 1-year punt, 2-year punt type of assets you could go after right now. And getting a 1st round pick of insulation is really, really nice for it. I think at the very minimum, the first cancels out Bateman, Tracy, the 3rd, and the 4th by itself, in my opinion. And then it's Caleb, Penix, and the 3rd for Burrow, which I think I would probably do in a non-competitive situation like Fled is in.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to describe it. Although I will say, We could be having the conversation if Tracy keeps doing what he's doing, that Tracy probably cancels the first plus. But like you said, if you're doing the deal right now, because we don't have that context yet, because there always is the outside chance they add a running back, I would agree with you that the first would be over Tracy right now.
I would take a first very easily over Tracy. Very easily.
I would agree right now. But if you're telling me if he keeps doing what he's doing and he's RB1 in his rookie season and they don't add a running back, the guy's going to be the Dynasty RB5.
I think it's hard to get there knowing that he was a 5th round running back who might undergo a coaching change. And there's a very good running back class on the docket. I think people would be very Tyler Algier,
that's why
James
I added the
Robinson
context if they don't add one.
Yeah,
I agree. If they add one, sure. If they don't add one, though, the guy's been unbelievable. He looks like
he's been great.
A better
Tony
great.
Baller. I think we're playing with fire if we're not taking first for him if people are offering them.
Yeah, I agree for what it's worth. Now, we are getting this comment. Caleb is not toast at all. He's a victim. I get it. We could play victim blaming all we fucking want. Caleb, you're the first overall pick. You're viewed as generational. Figure the fuck out.
Yeah, he should be objectively better than he's been so far, but I'm not going to sit here and say that he's like the only one to blame. Like, it's very clear that they have a coaching issue right now.
Like, I agree with you, Dynasty Dumpster Fire, that he's not a bust. He's in his rookie season. Like, relax, chill the fuck out. He's not a bust.
Well, but he's responding to a lot of Bears Twitter right now, and a lot of people are very much overreacting on Caleb Williams.
Yeah. And that's why I added the context if they don't add a running back. That's why
we got to get into our waivers here.
I had to respond to those. But
anyways, okay, let's go through the top 5 waivers so we can get out of here. We do have a better waiver week than last week, but it's still not like super elite by any means. Yeah. I think there's a couple guys that are really interesting. I'm going to just quickly talk about Trey Benson again, just because he had another good week in terms of efficiency. And he had like 10 carries, I believe, this week, which is one of the highest that he's posted so far this year. And it also didn't take like a James Conner being evaluated for a concussion for him to actually get some touches. So knowing that he's getting more touches and knowing that he looks good is something that's worth noting for those of you guys that are in a winning position. Line your bench with some upside. Trey Benson makes a lot of sense there. I don't think anybody's going to argue with it. He's been on the waiver list like 3 weeks in a row now because we just haven't had a whole lot of running back talent there.
Yeah, you're not going to find bigger Trey Benson truthers than right here. So the fact that he's actually getting some work, especially because we're going to be in bye weeks. Again, he actually does have his bye week in week 11. So make sure if you are picking him up as an immediate play, that's not going to be the reason you pick him up. It's going to be a guy that week 12 buys, week 13 buys, week 14 buys. You need a desperation running back, and you also got implied upside if Connor were to go down. That's why you're picking it up. If you need a week 11 play, you can even argue Benson a little bit lower. But regardless, he's just a guy that shouldn't be available in leagues because of that upside. But I'll let you keep going. Sorry.
Yep. And then Jalen Coker, very similar because he's on his bye as well. But we did see great usage, 93% of the snaps, 32% of the targets. Again, you can't use him this week because they are on bye. But a decent, low-end flex play going forward, I would say. I think you could definitely make the argument he could be more than that, but at the very least, a guy that you could maybe use in a pinch, even though he's on bye this week. Week 12 has like 4 or 5 teams on bye, I think, and then week 14 has 6 teams on bye, so there's going to be more bye weeks coming up that you could use a guy like Jalen Coker for.
Yep, I agree. And on top of that, in the listener league, I didn't start him this week. I probably should have. Now, again, he didn't have a great bottom line, but the reason why I was concerned coming into the week is that he had only 59% of the team routes. The biggest underrated aspect of this week's game and what I took away is he has officially become a full-time player, 93% of the routes, like you pointed out.
Yep, no, for sure. Curtis Samuel is one guy that I do think could be an interesting play if you needed someone immediately, because 88% of the routes, again, we do not know what the status of Keon Coleman or Amari Cooper are. I would say Coleman is less likely to come back next week than Cooper by the sounds of it, because Cooper was kind of like a late inactive, whereas Coleman appears could be out for a couple more games. But if Curtis Samuel has a role and Dalton Kincaid actually also got banged up in this game like we talked about, he had 24% of the targets. Didn't really have a great game, 7.5 PPR points, but I do think it's worth noting that Curtis Samuel could be an interesting low-end flex play in a game against Kansas City where they're going to need to probably throw the ball to win. It's not a game that you can win easily.
You would take Samuel over Mac Hollins?
I would. Yeah, I know Mac Hollins had the yards. I believe he had more yards, but Curtis Samuel had the targets, which to me is more indicative of what we can expect going forward.
See, Again, I think both are pretty much Jags at this point. Curtis Samuel, he was good at one point in his career. He just hasn't been good this year. I think I personally would take the shot on Matt Collins because he's kind of being supplemented into that Keon Coleman role. Whereas when Amari Cooper comes back, I can see him getting more slot usage, which will impact. I mean, we already know Shakir's also going to get slot usage, but which will impact more Curtis Samuel than it would a guy like Matt Collins. Because again, 6'4", 221, kind of playing that Coleman role.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with Cooper. If we have word that both of them are going to be out again, I'm more interested in Samuel. But like you said, if it's just Coleman that's out, it could be more interesting for Holland. So again, you could make the argument for either guy, but yeah. I personally just because Curtis Samuel's pedigree and the fact that he's been productive in the past, I think he's just the more interesting option.
That's fair. I mean, regardless though, you're probably in a tough spot if you have to start either of these guys going up against the Chiefs. So hopefully you do have better options for 1 week.
Yeah, hopefully you do. The next guy is the top running back available on the week for me. That's Audric Estime, running back of the Denver Broncos. Randomly, well, I guess not randomly. They did talk him up for a couple of weeks in a row, but we did see a changing of the guard on Week 10's game where we saw Audric Estime lead the Broncos in carries. He had, I believe, 84% of the running back carries for the team, 64% of the overall rush attempts. It appears Javonte Williams was benched. And not only that, but Estime looked pretty productive, exactly like what you and I saw at Notre Dame, which is why both of us had him as a top 5 running back in the class, which is he's going to get you what's there. He's going to be consistent. He's a 4.7 runner. He's not going to break off, 50-yard touchdowns, but what he is going to do is continuously move the chains. And honestly, the Broncos have needed that because Javonte Williams hasn't been that for them.
Can he beat Tyler Algier? That's all he needs to get playing time on this team, pretty much.
Yeah.
If he can beat Tyler Algier.
If Tyler Algier was traded to the Broncos today, would he beat out Javonte Williams and would he be a consistent fantasy asset that you would want?
Yeah, for sure. Now, this is going to impact, by the way, season long, but it's going to suck because of how high we were on Algier and how high we were on in terms of Estime. And Algier gets Bijan added to his backfield. And I can tell you right now, if the Denver Broncos have a top 15 pick and Ashton Genty is available, he will be a Denver Bronco.
Yeah, Mountain West Conference, they probably all about that shit right there. That would be an interesting.
His new Alvin Kamara, for sure.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun. I'm not going to lie. That would be a lot of fun for Genty. AD Mitchell is, to me, the top waiver ad just in general across the board this week. We saw 95% of the routes, 17% of the targets. He had 12.1 PPR points. Looks really good, too. It's really unfortunate that I think the reason that AD Mitchell is not playing more is because mentally he's maybe behind the 8 ball a little bit from the offensive standpoint and whatnot. But to me, it's malpractice that he's not on the field more.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. Now, the reason why because we were actually talking about trading details today. For those of you that are wondering, Corey needs a running back pretty badly in the Flock League. I have
well documented.
Yeah, I have a good stable of backs between guys like Breece Hall, Chase Brown, Tyrone Tracy, some implied guys like Jonathan Brooks and Trey Benson on my bench. Like I feel good about my running back core, and I kind of need just wide receiver depth at this point because I'm kind of relying upon one of like Tolbert or Worthy or someone to be in my flex, which is just not a situation I want to be in. So we were actually talking about deals, and the reason why I couldn't do the AD one is that if Pittman was ruled out for the year, I would have been like, okay, I'm fine doing this type of deal. But with Pittman just ruled out for the week, like if he was going to be placed on IR, why hasn't he been yet?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's still possible that it could happen. And it's not even Pittman. Like, why is Alec Pierce on the field over AD Mitchell?
He's the MVS of this offense. He
is, but like Mitchell does similar things or can do at least similar things as Alec Pierce, only he's just way better as a route runner, consistently creating separation. So it's also, for what it's worth, fab wise, am I spending more than 10, 20% on any of these guys? Probably not. And Mitchell and Estime are the only 2 guys I would even get that high on. Because again, we don't know if Mitchell's going to be a starting receiver. Like, because if Pittman's back this week, then there's a good chance he's running 20% of the routes again.
Yeah, and I think Jelly Boy makes a good point, like leadership on top of just schematic role, because we see all across the NFL, Matt Harmon's coined this phrase, but sacrificial X receiver. Like Alec Pierce is the sacrificial X of this offense in the sense that he is going down the field, he's opening everything up underneath, but like he'll only get 3 to 4 targets per game, and like he's been really efficient with those targets for what it's worth. Yeah, no, he has been really good with them. And a Dynasty Dumpster Fire is just yelling at Bears Twitter in our comment section. Neither of us ever called Caleb Williams a bust. I don't know. Maybe he's doing remember I can't believe people say Steph Curry is a bad shooter.
He's doing that thing where he like makes up people that are I get you're probably yelling at Bears Twitter right now, but neither of us are saying this about Caleb Williams. So I don't. Yeah, like Chicago fans, like we're not Chicago fans, bro. Like I don't know who you're
anything
talking
but
to
it.
right now.
Yeah. In fact,
anyways,
I kind of dislike the Bears, to be honest.
Yeah,
I don't know why.
for sure. He's yelling at me. Facts. Anyways, I appreciate you guys for joining us. Early top 5 waivers again. Not a great waiver slate. Daniel will have it covered tomorrow. I'll have you covered on TikTok if you guys are over there, and then we'll have one of the last couple trade targets, I would imagine, on Wednesday because people's trade deadlines are probably coming up in the next few weeks. But yeah, really appreciate you guys for joining us, and like the stream, if you guys enjoyed, comment, all that good stuff. We will, like we said and teased earlier in the stream, have something with the 2025 class live as a site exclusive for those of you guys that are site subscribers. If you want to be a site subscriber, you can get the link down below in the description there, flockfantasy.com/FSE, and all that good stuff. So with that being said, peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.